That was Rescue Me by Y&T. With me on the phone right now is Dave Meniketti, lead vocalist, lead guitarist of Y&T, who will be coming here to Ventura on Friday, July 19th to play the Ventura Music Hall. And with that, I welcome Dave to the Pure Rock Show. How you doing, Dave?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm really excited. I've been a fan of your band since I started listening to music, pretty much. It's been a long time. I see you've been touring for a few months, and you have dates pretty much through the end of the year in Europe. How have the shows been going so far this year?
Yeah, we've been doing pretty darn well, I'd say. Most of our shows have sold out in advance, and that's nice. It's a nice feeling.
Yeah.
It's cool. We're obviously about halfway through, or a little over halfway through of our 50th year anniversary. And a few more shows in the West Coast. And then we're off to Europe for a little over a month. And then we're done. That's the end of our 50th.
Then you take the break.
Until next year.
I was going to ask you, what does the 50th year go back to? Because I was trying to figure that out from when the band started, from your first album. Like, what are you considering the 50th anniversary of? What's it going back to?
Yeah, 50th anniversary to me is when the original band got together and started writing original material. And that was in January of 1974. It took a couple of years before our first record came out. That was 76. But to me, the beginnings of the band is the beginning of the band.
Got it.
Not necessarily when the first record gets released. So
that makes sense. Throwing a quick anecdote here, I can tell you the beginning of my experience with Y&T. I was probably about 11 years old, and I bought these two K-Tel records called Masters of Metal and White Hot. Are you familiar with them by any chance?
I remember Masters of Metal, yeah.
Yeah, White Hot came out the year after, and Masters of Metal had Mean Streak on it, and White Hot, Don't Stop Running. That was the first time I heard of your band, and that, I'm telling you, those compilations worked, I think, for training kids, especially on the bands, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think much of them when I saw the releases, but then, you saying that, and of course, obviously at the time I realized that it was hitting a bunch of people that had no idea who we were, so that was good.
Hey, did you have any say on being included in compilations like that, or was it all just record company decisions?
No, we didn't even know they were coming out until they were already out.
Well, surprise!
Yeah, surprise!
That's great. Well, I'll start with just a little bit of a history of the band. Won't go too crazy, but I've noticed over the years in doing this show, and I play Y&T pretty regularly, that most of the younger listeners either aren't aware or don't have much, history of the band. They might know a couple songs, but you have quite an interesting history, obviously going back 50 years, which is just crazy to even say. I don't know where the time goes. But basically, the recorded history of Y&T began on London Records in 76, right? We had a couple records for London. And then what transpired? I've heard stories, but I want to hear from your mouth. Why the switch from London to A&M? How did that happen?
Well, it was a forced kind of thing, and actually it was a good thing at the end of the day, because London only had a few rock acts on their label when we signed with them. They had ZZ Top, they had the Rolling Stones, and a few other bands.
Not bad company.
No, certainly not. But it was limited as far as their rock selection. When we were getting ready to release, well, not even when we were getting ready to release, when we were in mixing for our second record for them, our manager comes up to us and says, London's decided to drop all of their rock acts, and they're just going to stick with popular music, which was, kind of like Dean Martin, Engelbert Humperdinck for them. And
interesting decision.
And they were going to stick with the classical division, which was fine. That's, in fact, I'm a fan of one of the people that was on London Records, which was Luciano Pavarotti.
Oh, wow.
But nonetheless, we knew then that our second record, which wasn't even finished being mixed, was already going to be dead in the water. So it was all about, where are we going next? So that's what happened with leaving London and going to, which ended up being A&M Records.
When I saw it on London Records, I couldn't even think of anybody else on that label. You're talking the mid-'70s, like you'd think, Warner Brothers, Columbia were signing all, the hard rock bands.
Sure.
It was always kind of interesting to me that you're even on London. So, and actually, one other question.
Me too. Me too.
Is the story in Wikipedia about someone seeing you playing with Queen and then deciding to sign you to London, is that accurate?
That was correct. Yeah, but they were coming out to see us anyway. It wasn't a surprise.
Okay.
We were playing 2 shows with Queen, their Night at the Opera tour, and it was one of those things back then when you played Berkeley Community Theater, you played 2 shows in one night. In fact, when I first second time I saw Jimi Hendrix was Berkeley Community Theater playing 2 shows in one night. They actually made a film of it.
Huh.
But so they came out to see us, and our managers told us backstage while we were in between the first and second show. He goes, "Yeah, here's the president of London Records," and he came back and met us and everything. And our managers wanted our manager at the time wanted to let us know that he was really signing the production company because he felt so good about the production company more than just Y&T. It was just like, oh, thanks a lot. That's great.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you move over to A&M. Was there any negotiations with any other companies, or was A&M, totally after you and you signed?
We were doing the thing that everybody was doing at that time, which of course is playing shows in LA and inviting out all these different A&R guys from different record companies. Mm-hmm. And we certainly did our share of that, and lots of them said they were coming and didn't show up, or the ones that did show up didn't necessarily go one way or the other with it. I mean, they ended up passing, obviously, but it was a tough time to get signed, talking about late 70s, and that was not the hot time for a band like us.
Yeah, that was like really disco and pop, right? Yeah. Taking over around that time.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of pop things that were happening, and there were a lot of things that were going on in other cultures or other styles of rock at the time. And, what was to become this amazing thing of the 80s rock music, it had not surfaced yet. So we were among the other bands that were having a tough time getting signed. And we did get interest from A&M Records, and I thought, okay, well, that's cool. I mean, they're a major label. Mm-hmm. They don't have a lot of hard rock on their label. In fact, I think we were probably the only one for a long time.
Yeah, the one that came to mind was Styx around that time. I guess you can consider them kind of hard rock.
Yeah, they had Styx, and they had a lot of other bands that were in rock, but not in the same genre as our style.
Exactly. Sure. So with A&M comes Earthshaker, Black Tiger, Mean Streak. I mean, that's pretty much the triumvirate, I think, of most of your most well-known hard rock, I would say, to this day. The bulk of what you play in concert and what you hear on the radio, really great albums there. Any specific memories or anything you want to throw out about that time period, those 3 albums?
Well, I mean, obviously it was exciting stuff for us because we were not only getting a foothold elsewhere outside of just a few regions of the States, we were getting more and more tours with major acts and breaking through. Also, it was the beginning of us going overseas for the first time, going to Japan in 1982 and also into the UK and Europe in 1982. And like some other stories that we've heard over the years, we ended up breaking bigger overseas first before we hit the States hard as we did. So we became headliners in the UK after our first tour over there in 82. We did our first headline tour in 82, just a smaller halls and clubs, as our very first, putting our foothold into any place outside of the U.S. And it was so well received that we ended up getting the AC/DC tour later that year and also getting a special guest position at the Reading Festival, which is a very popular festival at that time. So we were kind of held in high regards in the UK at that point. And because of that, we were able to go back on the Mean Streak record and do a full-on headline tour in big places, and we really did well. So that was very exciting. And also at the same time, we did the same thing in Europe to some degree. We did the AC/DC tour in 82 in Europe, and came back with Ozzy Osbourne in 83, And again, this is when they only had two bands, a headliner and the support. So, you're much more likely to get attention from the audience. And also in Europe, people show up on time. I mean, they show up for the opening act. They just don't show up for the headliner. So, we had almost full to completely full audiences every night when we played in front of AC/DC and Ozzy. So that made a huge impact for us going forward.
Yeah, that much more respectful than us Americans, right?
Sure. And then when we hit Mean Streak, that really started to turn things around. And actually the next record, In Rock We Trust, with Don't Stop Running, those two made a huge impact in the States. And all of a sudden, these tours that we were doing around the U.S. were starting to take hold, and we were really getting somewhere. So that was a good thing.
Yeah, and as a very young kid, that's when I first heard you on commercial radio, Don't Stop Running, and I even heard you do an ID for the local station, In Rock We Trust, and we trust you're listening to, blah, blah, blah. I was like, all right, my K-Tel band, they're on the radio now. This is great. And In Rock We Trust, other than Don't Stop Running, that seemed to kind of push you kind of a little more towards a pop edge than what you've been doing. Was that calculated, or is that just the type of music that was coming out around that time?
Well, again, I could only say that the first two labels we were on, A&M and London, were good labels, but they weren't the right label for our style. So, of course, we give them Mean Streak and Black Tiger, which they should have just knocked out of the park.
Definitely.
Everywhere else they did, because that version of A&M in Japan was killing it, and also A&M Europe and UK was killing it. I mean, we were killing it everywhere but the U.S. as far as our record company was concerned. So they kept hitting us over the head like everybody was getting hit at that time. More, radio-friendly songs. We need more radio-friendly. And we're like, hey, we just gave you Mean Streak, and that did really well on radio. And they're like, and it was everything that we wanted to come across as. And so basically what they did is they force-fed us a co-writer to come down from L.A. and write some of the tunes for the next record. And we were basically not exactly super happy about that.
Yeah.
We're like, hey, we're coming up with good tunes on our own. We're good songwriters. We can do this. And but as it turned out, I mean, it was a good compilation between us. The guy's name was Jeff Lieb, and Jeff was an interesting fellow, and he came up with some good ideas that we wouldn't have come up with probably, at least in his way versus ours. And it was a good combination. We had a lot of great songs on that record, and they all were not necessarily pop oriented. They were pretty straight ahead. Rock and Roll's Gonna Save the World, Masters and Slaves. I mean, there were a lot of good hard rock songs on there, but and quite frankly, that was our biggest record in the States as far as that went. And so, things started happening. I mean, when Don't Stop Running came out and Lipstick and Leather, we even got on, for those people that were old enough to remember this, Dick Clark's American Bandstand.
Yeah.
He played there.
Yeah. And obviously that was the time MTV was really coming into its own too, which I'm sure helped with your videos for those songs. Which leads me into one of my favorite videos of all time from the 80s and one of your most memorable songs, which I'm going to mention from your next album.
Sure.
I have a couple questions about this. Open Fire, your first live album, obviously a record company decision, but was this originally supposed to be a live album? And how did Summertime Girls get on that? Like, it just seemed very odd to me. At that point, I'd only heard of, Kiss Alive 2 having some studio tracks on a live album. What was the thought behind that?
It was a real cluster, I could say. Again, A&M, in their wisdom, even though we were really kicking butt now and getting on, hundreds of radio stations across the U.S., which was, of course, what the U.S. company cared about the most. They were waiting for the next record's material, and we were giving them all kinds of demos of what we thought was fantastic material. And they kept turning stuff down, going, "No, you don't have enough tunes yet. You keep writing." And by this time, it's coming up to the summer, and we're like, we're going to waste this whole year after a great tour that we just had, the last 2 or 3 tours in the U.S. And our manager said, well, you guys are really well known for being a better live act than even on your records. So why don't we put out our first, live record right now and get that out there at least, while you guys are still writing for the next studio record. And we thought, why not? Sure. So we did that. And along with all the other tunes that for the next studio record that we had submitted to A&M, Summertime Girls was one of them. And that was not written to give A&M their due, like, hey, here's a radio hit for you. It was truly actually just one of those things where it kind of wrote itself while we were messing around in the rehearsal studio. And after we wrote it, we're like, this is a really good song, but is this us? But we just threw it out there anyway and thought, okay, well, we'll give it to the record company and see what they thought. And the A&R guy hated it. He said, nah. He said he even took the cassette. Of course, that was how we gave our demos out at that time. And he kicked it across the A&M parking lot. He was so frustrated with it. He thought it was a song.
And
so
you must have been thinking,
whatever.
What the heck do they want? This is a hard rock, not even hard rock, but a rock commercial, very catchy hook.
Right.
What do they want from us, right?
Right. So we just thought, okay, well, that's fine. Then here's what we'll do. We're going to do this live record. We know this song now. We've already played it in rehearsal a bunch of times. Let's do it live. And we'll put that on the live record, and nothing else. People can say yay or nay on it, and it'll be all guitar, no keyboards at that time, because it's live. It's just us. And it'll be a pretty rockin' version of it. And so while we were in A&M's parking lot doing the mixes for that, because the company that actually recorded us 2 nights to do this live record, they had this truck called Les Mobiles. They were out of Canada, and they were a very popular live recording truck. And our manager's idea was, let's have them park in their parking lot so that I can run across to them and show them the rough mixes of the live record and have them get excited. So he ran across Summertime Girls Live's thing when the A&R staff was having a meeting, and they heard that, and they go, oh, my God, what's this song? Oh, my God, get the band in right now and record this in the studio. This is a hit. So, okay, there we go. Typical record company crap. First the guy hears the song and says it's not worthy, and then the entire staff is together, and they're going, what are you talking about? This is a smash single. Let's get them to go in the studio right now as they're mixing this live record and do a studio version of it. And then we did a video of it, and they're like, we got to put it on the live record. That's the fastest way we can get it out right now. And so that's how it ended up being that way. Well, and then, of course, they stuck it on the next studio record as well. A lot of decisions that were made over the years, who we went with, what happened, sure, there are a lot of mistakes along the way, but everybody was having those kinds of things. Some people were lucking out and getting people interested in the right way all the way through their career, and we were always struggling with our companies, just the way it was.
So did they release Summertime Girl again on Down for the Count, or they just didn't release it as a single?
No, they just released it during the summer, and it was in the top 40. And in fact, it was the 10th most requested song in the country for like 3 weeks in a row. And we were out on tour at that time, and our video for it was in the hottest play on MTV. It was being played, like a top 10 or something like that. And we were out with Motley Crue at that time, Theater of Pain tour. So it was just the 2 of us playing stadiums every night, and it was just killing. I mean, we were doing the right thing. And, but it was very frustrating being with a company that didn't really understand the band, and didn't do for us what they could have done. Yeah,
and I remember that video on MTV, and it's still one of my favorite videos. And I had a summer theme show a few weeks ago, and of course I had to play it. It's always one of the songs I play.
Sure.
It has staying power. Hearing Aid, that came out a couple of years later. How did you get involved with that?
Well, in 1983, when we were on the Mean Street tour, we were playing with numerous acts around the country and around the world. And for about 3 or 4 weeks, we were out with Dio. And so Ronnie really liked the band, and he loved my voice, and which was nice of him, although he didn't say anything on that tour. He was very quiet. So I didn't really know this until later. But anyway, the guys in the band and us, we were all just hit it off. We all became real good friends. And I think that stuck with Ronnie when it was time to do this, to do the hearing aid thing, is that he wanted to get my voice on this track. So he asked me to come out, and of course I did. And the first night we did the background vocal with a big band, with a big, giant group of all these people that were involved in it.
Yeah, I've seen like this unofficial documentary of it. Everybody in the stands there, smaller We Are the World.
Awesome.
Must have been a great time.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was very cool. And guess where they recorded it? A&M Studios.
Oh, look at that.
So it was
your home base.
Okay, well, exactly. So the next morning at 8:00 in the morning, I was the first singer to come in and sing on the tune. And it was very strange to be there, that early in the morning and only have a camera crew and nobody else after the night before when it was jammed with people. I mean, every hallway, every single studio room was just jammed with people while we were doing the background vocals, and also different guitar players were doing solos. It was cool. It was a fun event. So I came in, and Ronnie was at the control room with his engineers, and he said, "Dave, I'm going to play you back my rough vocal of this song as the lead vocal, and so you get an idea of the melody of what's going on with this song, and the lyrics are in front of you." And he played it one time, and he goes, "You ready?" And I said, "Sure." and he rolled tape, and I started singing, and I got through it, and they stopped it, and I thought, "Oh man, I could do that better." And he goes, "No, you're done, man." He goes, "Wow. That was great." And I go, "Oh no, I mean, you go, "Oh no, you got it." He goes, "Now just do some ad libs at the end, when we're going out," and that was it. And of course, you never know what's going to happen after that because how many different guys are going to be singing on this, right? I mean, Rob Halford was in the hallway when I was getting ready to go in, and he was the second singer, so we watched him for a while. And and then it turns out that once the tune gets started, after the intro, I was the very first vocalist on the record, so I was very happy with that. Quite a few years later, Ronnie pulled me aside when we got together when we were doing some other stuff, and he said, "I got to tell you, man," he goes, "I think you're one of the greatest singers in rock and roll."
Wow,
and I'm like,
"Whoa!" What a compliment!
He said this in front of my band members, and they were like, "Oh wow, this is so cool, Dave."
That is amazing.
So yeah.
I always wondered if you sang the whole song through and then they picked what they wanted, or they told you the actual verse to sing and that was all you did.
No, they had everybody sing the song all the way through, and then of course they had their choices of what to do at that point.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's a classic song, and you actually have a song on the album, "Go for the Throat." Was that the record company decision that decided to do that, or was that?
No, that was Ronnie's thing. Ronnie asked for certain bands to submit songs that hadn't been recorded already, and so we went in the studio and recorded that just for that album.
Wow, he was definitely a fan of yours. It's awesome. So you moved to Geffen after A&M. Not surprising from your comments that you were ready for a change, and Geffen definitely seemed like the place to be in the late 80s there. Put out 2 albums on Geffen. And again, one little quote I saw, I just wanted to see if this is true. I always like validating things I read to see if they're true or not. That you were forced to change the title of Boys Night Out to L.A. Rocks because of Sammy Hagar's song of the same name coming out on his album at the same time. Is there truth to that?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, that's right, because Sammy had just joined Van Halen, but he still had some contract deals with Geffen. And so in order to get out of it, they said, "Hey, you got to give us at least one more record." And so he went back in the studio and he did this song called Boys Night Out. Well, his keyboard player, who I had been writing a couple of songs with in between time, had told me about this song that he had called Boys Night Out, but Sammy never liked it. and he said, maybe you guys could do something with it. And I said, nah, this isn't our style. And then he said, well, if you don't need to even do this, but if you want to use the any title or anything that we're working on, go for it. So we came up with a great tune, and we didn't have a chorus. I mean, we had the chorus, but we didn't have a title. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, there was this tune I was writing with, the keyboard player from Sammy's band, and they said it was Boys Night Out. Well, we could use that because it's perfect amount of syllables,
mm-hmm.
And we could write around that. And so then, of course, Sammy decides to get the band back together again to do this one, album that he had to do for Geffen.
Mm-hmm.
And it was his commitment. And then they were like, hey, wait a minute, that was going to be our first single, and it was apparently going to be one of his singles. So he said no, and he pulled his weight with David Geffen, and David said, nope, we have to change the name of that song. And they'd already made something like 50,000 records, were already made up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've
so
seen them.
there are certain records that have Boys Night Out on it, and then so we just said, okay, well then we'll put the bridge name, which is LA Rocks.
And it's funny. I don't think Sammy ever even released that as a single, Boys Night Out. I mean, if it did, it didn't do that.
I don't think he did.
Yeah.
No, I think there was talk about it, and he just didn't want anything in his way. So
wow.
He got his ear on David Geffen, and David, of course, said, "Well, you're a much bigger act than Y&T. Har har har. Let's get let's have them change their name, the name of their song."
I'm surprised that would even be a consideration, unless you were both going to release singles the same name. But even then, anyway, it's an interesting story. Thanks for clearing that up. I have noticed also you have a very strong connection to Sammy and Ronnie Montrose, which are they're some of my favorite artists as well. Did you know Ronnie back in the early days? I know you've done a lot, since Ronnie passed in terms of tribute shows, and you're on his great 10x10 album. Were you friends with Ronnie in the Bay Area scene back in the early days?
In the earliest days, when the Montrose band was actually brand new, and they had the albums like Montrose and Paper Money and things like that, we didn't know him. We were just fans. Mm-hmm. Because at that time, the band was just getting together. It was the early 70s. And we were fans, and we'd sit around and listen to that, and Deep Purple and The Who and everybody else at that time. So they were just a band that we were really happy about, that we loved their tunes and everything like that. And then when they kind of broke up and Sammy went his separate way, we ended up doing a bunch of shows together with Sammy Hagar. When we were first coming up. So his solo thing and us, along with Eddie Money and a few other people from the Bay Area, we were all starting out about the same time. And so we would, do lots of shows together. And later on, we would play shows with the newly reformed Montrose. And then we just became friends, me and Ronnie, and Ronnie even wanted to be the producer on the 10 record.
Oh, wow.
And it didn't end up working out, but we wrote songs together, we hung together. He became a good friend over the years, and it was really a sad day in my life and all of our lives that when we knew, that Ronnie had taken his own life. And I was on tour at the time. We were on the East Coast and got that news. But he was a fantastic, not only a fantastic guitar player and songwriter, but just his music and the Bay Area and that style of music became such a part of my life. And so many people in the Bay Area. I mean, Montrose, I thought Montrose was gigantic, but of course, just like everybody else, we didn't realize the scope of the record industry. And when somebody's being played all the time on the radio and you're seeing them playing live in your area all the time, you just figure they're big everywhere. But he wasn't. They weren't, and it took them forever just to even get a gold record. That was well past the band being said and done with Sammy's version and everything. So was interesting, but he was a good buddy. I really had a lot of respect for him.
Yeah, I saw a clip on YouTube of you jamming with him and Joe Satriani playing "Going Down." I don't know what event that was.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Do you remember what that was?
That's Joe's jam band song. It's like whenever he's going to have somebody jam with him, it's like, hey, let's do "Going Down." Okay. But it was cool, and the three of us played some fun stuff together on that. It was that was for a Bay Area music magazine award show kind of thing.
The BAMIs?
I don't think it was the BAMIs. I think the BAMIs were done, and then they came up with this other version of it.
Okay.
But anyway, it was a similar kind of thing, and but it was a cool gig.
Cool.
It was fun.
And then I saw clips too. I wish you did this nationally, but you played a few songs with the original Montrose members, subbing in for Ronnie.
Yes.
I guess in Northern California, which was awesome. And then just later,
that was great.
Yeah, and then last on the subject, you contributed to the 10 by 10 album that came out posthumously on the song "Heavy Traffic," which is one of my favorite songs from that album with Eric Martin on vocals. Were you considered to do any vocals on that album yourself? I was wondering about that.
I remember that we went in and did some live version of a couple of Ronnie Montrose tunes, and I don't remember if they ever ended up using them or not. Probably not. But that whole thing was so weird, and my wife, who manages the band, she was friends with Ronnie's wife, and when we got home from that tour after he had passed away, she got together with Jill and me and told us the whole story and what was going down, and Jill was trying to help her out because she was trying to get some things, obviously now she's a widow and she's trying to take care of business on Ronnie's side of things, musically, and get everything, all her ducks in a row, and she was asking Jill for help to sort that out, and Jill did help her out in that regard. So
nice.
There was a lot of good vibes between us that went down with that.
I know it took several years for that to finally come out, but I think the finished product was great. There's some great songs on there and great performances from everybody with Ronnie's tracks that he left behind. So last history question, then we'll get to the present here. Your live album, which came out in 1991 on Metal Blade Records, that to me at the time, it kind of was like you saying goodbye, that Y&T was going to be over. Was that the plan at the time, or did you always think you were going to take a break and come back later?
Well, as we had discussed about different things that were going down with, being on the wrong labels and all these different things that happened during our career. I mean, I'm not, going, woe is us. I mean, we had some great career up until that point. Everything was going quite well, actually. Certainly could have gone better had we had certain things, in line maybe. But nonetheless, it was, it was good. But we were getting frustrated as we hit the 90s and, or say the late 80s, the end of the 80s, because we were kind of getting pigeonholed by the people in the industry, not the fans, but the industry people. Mm-hmm. And so we just finally got to the point where we said, enough's enough. Maybe we should cut our losses. We had 17 good years in the industry, and we'll move on and we'll do something else. But before we do that, let's do a quick tour of maybe, mostly West Coast shows and wrap it all up. And one of our last shows was New Year's Eve, and that was what we decided to actually do a live record behind. And that's where Metal Blade Record came in, because we already got rid of London Records Geffen at that point. Mm-hmm. We were no longer with them, so Metal Blade stepped in and said, "Oh, we'd love to do a live record with you guys." So that's indeed what happened.
Nice. It's a great record. I love that record. I don't know if there are any overdubs on that, but it sounds totally live and raw to me. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's a really good, straight-ahead live record. And what's cool is that, luckily we didn't retire. We thought we were going to retire, but so I took a couple of years off, and I ended up building a recording studio at my house and doing all this other stuff. But we would every once in a while get back and play a few shows, and then finally we said, screw this, I know that, grunge is in right now, and and it's no longer popular to be playing hard rock from the 70s and 80s, but we sound so good. Why should we stop playing if our fans still want to come and see us?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what happened, and we did a couple of independent records in the 90s, and finally in the 2000s, things turned back around again, and we're being asked to do all these tours in Europe and everywhere else again, so it all sort of got back into play again.
And that's something, at the end of the day, the whole grunge thing really only lasted, 5-6 years? You know, it really wasn't even that long.
Something like
you know?
that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So up to the present day, again, Y&T are playing here at Ventura Music Hall Friday, July 19th. I know you've played Ventura a couple times in the 2000s, I saw, but ever play around here earlier? Any memories or anything about Ventura that sticks out in your mind? Or
No, I think it was just the same hall that we played a couple of times. In fact, one of them, strangely enough, was with Ronnie Montrose.
Oh, wow. Oh, man. Can I go back in time? You have a video of that show by any chance?
No,
I'd love to
don't
see
think
that.
so. I mean, if somebody had a video machine at that time, because they certainly couldn't, they didn't have cell phones, so he couldn't have done it that way. But it would have been fun.
Wow. Around what time do you think that was?
Oh, probably early 2000s, something like that. I don't know. I can't even remember.
Wow, how cool. I know it all blends together. I know the first time I saw you guys was in 2005 when I was in New Jersey at the time. I finally got to see you guys. It was a great show. And I'm sure it will be a wonderful show here in Ventura. Very, very happy to have you coming to our backyard. Anything else you'd like to mention that I haven't gotten to?
Just the fact that, the set list that we're doing for the 50th anniversary is kind of a real cool thing for the fans, because we're playing at least one song from every studio record we ever recorded, even back in the 70s.
Oh,
so we're giving people a taste of where we came from and where we are today. And all with this band, which just kicks butt. It's just unbelievable how good the band is. And
yeah.
so
would you like to mention your other band members that are touring with you right now?
Sure. We have John Nyman on guitar, of course myself, lead vocals. Mike Vanderhoel is our drummer, and Aaron Lee is our bass player. And he's the newest guy. And when I say newest, it's funny. He's been in the band longer than most bands are together.
Yeah.
So
time is a crazy thing these days. Oh.
Yep. We're very good people. I mean, we're very, I should say, credible, and we stick with people that we know are good for, I mean, when we have it's like a family unit, the band is. And when these guys are part of our band, we're all together as one, and we're not into changing band members right and left. Unfortunately, we had to, because there were deaths in the original members, and other things that happened over the years, drug problems and things like that. But in fact, I am the only surviving original member that's alive, of course, and but because I'm the lead singer and the lead guitar player and principal songwriter, it still sounds the same pretty much. Yeah. I mean, obviously there were the styles of the original players, like Leonard's drum style nobody really plays like that. So it's you're never going to get quite that way. But Mike Vanderhoel plays those parts so well that it's not like you're missing anything per se from that standpoint, other than Leonard's cool personality and his own thing that he had. But and Joey Alves, our original rhythm guitar player, and Phil Kennemore was our original bass player. I need to mention all those guys.
Sure.
Those were the guys I grew up with, and we wrote so many great songs with.
Yeah, and I saw you last around 7 years ago when you played the Canyon Club, and I can attest to everybody out there, you guys sounded amazing. I was blown away, and your vocals still held up great. It's amazing when people get older. Some of these guys that we know and love, they go up there, and you're like, what are they even doing trying to sing anymore? Like, I appreciate it, but I mean, you haven't lost a beat. Your voice is incredible.
I know a lot of those guys, as a matter of fact, those guys that are struggling. And personally, I am of the kind of person that if I have even a cracking voice or a bad show because I'm sick or something, it pisses me off. I mean, I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. I mean, things just happen. Obviously, people get sick, especially on the road. It happens. But I usually sing through it and can usually, not have a terrible night per se, but I'll just have moments. But if I were the kind of guy that mostly lost his voice and couldn't do it, I would just stop. I honestly would. I just have too much pride in what I do as a musician to go forward in that regard. So I'm really lucky, or maybe not so lucky. Maybe it's because I really did take care of myself and care about my voice. But my voice is every bit as good as it's ever been. So I'm not even going to say that I'm on the downside of things or anything like that. It's not anything but. So
that's great.
I'm happy to be 70 years old and singing like a 40-year-old.
That's amazing. And it obviously, it's so great. We're so happy that you're healthy again and able to do all this. It's, good times. Got to enjoy these times, right? So thanks again, Dave. Really appreciate you joining us. I got today from the music hall that they have their low ticket warning going on. So if you're listening right now and you want to go, I would get your tickets quickly to see Y&T at the Ventura Music Hall Friday, July 19th. Dave, thanks again. Really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you for calling in.
You bet. Thank you.